Are you new to tanking, or maybe just looking for a tank that has a little bit more self-healing? Then Blood Death Knight is the tank for you. In this video here, I will show you how you can play the Blood Death Knight with a single button assistant. It's very fun, casual, relaxing, and you'll be doing a lot of damage and self-healing. In this video here, I will be going through the stats, the talents, the rotation, and even show you some gameplay. So you can of course also jump to the section that you're most interested in, or watch the entire video to learn everything about Blood Death Knight and using the single button assistant. So let's go. So talking about stats, what I always recommend is going with the highest strength / upgrade level. So you can see on your items it has an upgrade level on it. My weapon here, for example, is Adventurer. Whenever I get an upgrade level which is higher, like Hero or Veteran or Champion, I would always pick that one. So whenever you get a loot, like a loot drop, I would always recommend going with the highest upgrade level. But the moment you get the same upgrade level, like 2 champion items, that's when you're gonna look at the secondary stats, as you can see up here. Haste is always, especially because in this build here, both my raid build and dungeon build is we are using Sand Lane, and this Sand Lane build, no matter if it's raid or it's dungeon build, we want haste, as much haste as possible. The more haste we have, the lower global cooldown we have, the more faster attack speed we do, and also the more rune regeneration we get. So basically, the more haste we have, the more runes, runic power we get, the more death strikes we can spam, the more, the faster you can attack, because it's going to reduce our global cooldown, especially when using the single button assistant. We are getting punished with the global cooldown, which is very strong against Blood Death Knight, since Blood Death Knight is all about casting spells as fast as possible. You know, you want all those healing spells out and so on. So haste is just like omega when it comes to stats. So always try to get haste on your item. But again, first upgrade level to get most strength, then haste. And then, funny enough, it doesn't matter if you go to WoW Hit or Icy Veins, they all write it like this. They don't care if you get Mastery, Critical Strike, or Versatility as the second one on the stat. They just want haste on everything. Like, all your items just has to have haste on them. Of course, I'll upgrade level first. Then after that, haste on anything. So it doesn't matter if it's haste and Mastery, haste and Crit, haste and Versatility. Just to quickly go over what the other stats do. Mastery is, you can see here, each time you heal yourself with Death Strike, you gain, the X amount of mastery you have, healed as physical damage absorption shield, up to 65% of your maximum health. So now, when you actually use Death Strike, the more mastery you have, it's also going to give you a shield back, depending on how much you healed with it. Also, it's going to increase your attack power by a percentage amount. So mastery, decent, quite nice. Then you also got critical strike. Critical striking, well, every time you do damage or heal, you have a chance to do double damage. And the more crit you have, the higher chance you have to do these double damage. We also have this passive spell here called Riposte. You gain parry equal to 100% of your critical strike from gear. So the more crit we have, the more parry we also have. And parry is nice because when a boss attacks us, we have a chance to parry the attack. So crit actually does more than just, offensive. It also does defensive for the Blood Death Knight, which is super nice. And then we have versatility. It literally just increases the damage and healing you do flat out and reduces the damage you take half of the amount of versatility you have. So increase the damage you do and also reduce the damage you take. But again, haste is just omega. It increases attack speed, rune regeneration, reduce the global cooldown. It is just omega when it comes to the Blood Death Knight. When it comes to talents, we're using Sand Lane for both the dungeon build and the raid build. Icy Veins, they very highly recommend using Sand Lane for both. Wowhead really recommends Sand Lane for raid, and is like a little bit 50-50 when it comes to dungeons with Defrig and Sand Lane. But I have seen most people who use Sand Lane, and personally, my preference myself, I also enjoy Sand Lane even more. I think it's an outstanding talent. In case you don't know really what it does, so the main thing of this build here is that your Death Call and Death Strike have a 35% chance to make your next Tar Strike become a Vampiric Strike. So when it actually upgrades to Vampiric Strike, you heal for 1% of your maximum health and grant your Essence of the Blood Queen, increasing your haste by 1% up to 7 for 25 seconds. And as you know, we love haste when it comes to Blood Death Knight using Zalain, and also this is just another self-healing, which is insane. The bonus one of this one here is while Dancing Rune Weapon is active, you gain Gift of Zalain. Gift of Zalain increases the effectiveness of your Essence of Blood Queen, which is the one we got from up here. Essence of the Blood Queen, which gives you haste, increasing your Essence of Blood Queen by 200, and Vampiric Strike replaces your Heart Strike for the duration. So basically now we are even more reliable on Dancing Rune Weapon, which we are having a lot. We are basically, you can see here, if I find it here, it has a 1.5 minute cooldown, but whenever we have this one up and running, we are basically immortal. Some other small facts about Zalain is, for example, when you're raising allies in combat, they get 100% HP and both of you get like 20% shield. We also get even more leech. Most people do play with this one here, which increases Icebound Fortitude. Me personally, I enjoy this one here more because I like to have more leech. With this one here and this one here, we technically have 5% leech on every damage we do, which I quite enjoy. We also summon like a Blood Beast whenever we use Dancing Rune Weapon, which is also pretty cool. And we have this one here, I really enjoy this one. Death and Decay has a chance to collapse when it damages a deceased enemy, dealing 150 of its remaining damage and instantly granting you its bonus effect remaining duration. So you know, normally when you stand inside your Death and Decay, then some of your spells has the chance to attack multiple targets. But now this just becomes like whenever it collapses, it just becomes a buff on you, and you don't have to stand inside that Death and Decay anymore. So it's just like a nice little thing. Also, it increases the Blood Plague damage we deal, which is our damage over time, like which you get from the Blood Boil, which is quite nice because the more that one heals, it's also gonna like siphon more like healing from the target, which is pretty nice. So all it's just like a nice little blood healing spec overall. In case you didn't know as well, we also got a new Apex talent for Blood Death Knight called Dance of Midnight. This one here is all about your rune weapons as well. So, you know, we are increasing rune weapons here, which is this one here, Dancing Rune Weapon. In case you don't know what that actually is, it summons a weapon, like your weapon, additional weapons that follows you for 12 seconds and mirrors all the attacks you do. And while it's also active, you gain 20% parry, which is of course very nice. Then of course we get all these bonuses from this and Lion spec here, but then also down here we have this one as well. While Dancing Rune Weapon is active, parrying an attack has a chance to make your next hard strike cost no runes and deals 150% increased damage. Nice. But for each Dancing Rune Weapon active, your damage is increased by 6% and your damage taken is reduced by 4%. Now you might think, okay, for each Dancing Rune Weapon, what do you mean? Well, technically this one here actually summons one additional copy of Dancing Rune Weapon and increases duration by 4 seconds. So already now we're getting 2 rune weapons, which of course is going to get double bonus here. But then lastly, we also have a rank 3 here. When you consume a rune, you have a chance to call a Dancing Rune Weapon to aid you for 6 seconds. So technically, if you're really lucky, you can be summoning a lot of rune weapons, which is going to help you, deal damage. And it's super fun because when you split, like for example, Blood Boil, which is giving the DCs on your targets, if you for example have 2 weapons active from the normal rune weapon, it's actually going to cast 3 DCs on each of the targets, which of course is going to heal you 3 times as much, which is quite nice. But yeah, just pretty fun. So the main difference between the 2 builds I have, which is the dungeon build and the raid build, it's very close to the meta when it comes to both builds. Like if you go to Icy Veins Wowhead, it's like 95% of the same talents they use. I have just changed a little bit. I prefer some leech, which they don't use. They are more reliable on the healer, where I'm like, I want to be a little bit more reliable on myself, if you know what I mean. So the main difference between the raid build and the dungeon build is really just like single target and multiple target spells. In the dungeon build here, for example, as you can see here, in the dungeon build here, we are using this one here, Deadly Range. Death Strike hits an additionally 2 enemies at 75 effectiveness. And also we have this one here where every time we parry an attack grants you a charge of Bloodied Blade, increasing your strength by 0.5 up to 4% for 15 seconds. And at 8 stacks, your next parry consumes all charges and unleash a harder strike for 300% effectiveness and increase your strength by 10%. The reason for why this one here is like great and in dungeons compared to raid is that you have a lot of more mobs attacking you, so you have a way bigger chance of parrying more attacks. So this one here is going to be triggering more times than just in a raid with a boss that like attacks you very slowly. So it's a nice passive to have in a dungeon. Also, of course, we want Death Strike to hit multiple targets since it's going to help us hold threat on multiple targets. And then also, just to remember here, you can see we have these two here. And then also we have Sanguinary Burst. So when you use a Dancing Rune Weapon, we also have this spell here called Blood Mist. When you cast Dancing Rune Weapon, you become enveloped in Blood Mist, surrounds you for 8 seconds, increasing your parry by 5. Also deals 14,000 shadow damage every second, enemies within 10 yards. Every time it deals damage, you gain 2 runic power, up to maximum of 10 runic power. Deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets. This one here we use in both the raid build and the dungeon build, this Blood Mist here. But in the dungeon build, we have this one here. When Blood Mist ends, it deals 5,000 shadow damage to 8 nearby enemies, healing you for 50% of the damage dealt. And the damage is increased by 2% for every 1 runic power spent while Blood Mist was active. This one here makes more sense when you're doing dungeons because you're going to be like, it's going to happen with a lot of mobs around you, so it's going to deal more damage and it's going to heal you more. When a boss, it doesn't really matter. We have better things to do when a boss. So that's like the main difference. We have like the Death Strike hits multiple target, parry bonus, this thing here that gives more strength, and also this AoE spell here. In the raid build though, we are using, instead of having those 3, which is not super effective on a boss, we're using these instead. When Crimson Scourge is consumed, you gain 6% versatility for 6 seconds. In case you don't know what that is, Crimson Scourge here, you auto attacks a target on targets infected by Blood Plague, have a chance to make your next death and decay cost no runes. So whenever your death and decay is glowing up, you should be using it because then you will be getting the bonuses from Crimson Scourge. And you can see here, while Crimson Scourge is active, your next Death and Decay heals you for 500 per bone shield charge and immediately gain 10 runic power. So already there, you get bonus when using your Death and Decay when it's glowing. We have that in both the raid and the tank, raid and the dungeon build. But in the dungeon build, we have this one here, which also now gives you 6% versatility, which is quite nice because 6% versatility reduces all the damage you take for 3%, and also it increases all the damage you deal by 6% and a healing, which is very nice. Then we also use in the raid build, Death Strike heals for an additionally 20% of its healing over 5 seconds. So now you actually, every time you use Death Strike, it's going to give you a healing over time ability on yourself, like a healing, like a Druid Hut, which is super cool. And then lastly, we also have this one here. While Blood Shield is active, taking direct damage reflects 2,400 shadow damage back to the attacker. Blood Shield can now also absorb up to 65 of your maximum health. So now we can have bigger shields from Death Strike. We give damage back to the attacker. The main reason we have this one here is because of the Absorb Shield. Then we have the self-healing over time, and we got this one here, gives versatility. So you can definitely see why this is more worth in a raid. Like imagine a raid where you have like a raid boss attacking you for high damage compared to the other ones, which is not that important in there. So that's actually the main difference between our raid build and dungeon build, which is, you can see here, the raid build, we have all these things here, and the dungeon build, we have the other things. So again, that is primarily the main difference between the tank build and dungeon build. In case you want these builds here, so you can just easily import them into your character, you could go to my Discord and all the export strings is going to be there for the talents, the UI, and for all my other builds I have been making. So yeah, feel free to join the Discord, link in the description, in case you want these builds as well. So when it comes to the rotation with a single button assistant and Blood Death Knight, you can really do it a lot better than only using the single button assistant. For example, if you get a tank who use single button assistant and they only use it, it can actually be a little bit hard, and it can also be hard keeping them up because it actually is not going to be using Death Strike as much as it should. I know in the script or something like that, it has something like it needs to get below 40% health before it actually starts spamming it a lot. And also it doesn't use Blood Boil and Death and Decays that much. So that's why I'm gonna like tell you how you can technically min-max with this build here. I'm just gonna go back to my dungeon build for a second. But yeah, so when you're using your single button assistant and spamming one, it will only be using Blood Boil, Dancing Rune Weapon, Death and Decay, Death Strike, Death Chaos, Half Strike, and Marrow Rend. Usually, if you're far away from your target, it's going to be using Death Cares, which is your like ranged spell, which is just giving a Blood Plague, and also 2 charges of Bone Shield. So it's a great spell to like use on far distance, since it kind of helps you, giving you some Bone Shields, and it also starts spreading your Blood Plague on just that single target. Then when you get closer, it will now use your Dancing Rune Weapon. I would personally prefer, so Blizzard, if you're watching this one here, I would prefer if we get Dancing Rune Weapon out of the single button assistant so we can control ourselves when we want to use our very big defensive cooldown. But at the same time, I also understand for people who maybe doesn't know what they, for example, are doing, and they just want to play and, you know, don't think about it. And then, of course, Dancing Rune Weapon is going to keep proccing for them. But for people who want to do a little bit more min-maxing, then it would be nice to get Dancing Rune Weapon out, so you could actually use it on whenever you do big pulls, on boss fights, but right now we just can't control it. So what's going to happen is when you get closer to the target, it will be using Dancing Rune Weapon. Dancing Rune Weapon is going to be, you know, dealing damage. It's going to give us more Bone Shields. It's going to give us, it's going to copy all our spells 3 times. So whenever you use a spell, it's going to be using that spell 3 times. So if it actually was active and you use Blood Boil, there would be 3 Blood Boils at the target, which would self-heal me, which is pretty cool. So one of the things you really want to try to do when you have Dancing Rune Weapon on is to make sure that all the targets around you have the 3 stacks of Blood Boil, as you can see here. The thing is, which I have noticed with the Blood Death Knight, is that if the target I am attacking already has my Blood Plague on them, it really don't want to use Blood Boil. So whenever you have like a lot of targets around you and half of them doesn't have Blood Boil on, it doesn't care. It still don't want to use a Blood Boil unless it's the only thing it can do. So what I would do, that is why I have Blood Boil here. You could technically also do like this if you want, and have your shield up here and your Death Grip up here, and then, you know, help your rotation down here. But for me, it's actually fine having it like this. But it's up to you. Like, it's personal. So what I would do is, like, you know, when you get close to it, feel free to use your that spell again, which is called Death Cares. Then it will be using Death and Decay, which is fine. And now it's going to be using Marrow Rent, which is fine. It's going to be using our Dancing Rune Weapon. And now it doesn't want to use Blood Boil, but now you please use your Blood Boil, because then you can see it's going to be using 3 dots on each of them. And then after that, you're free to, you know, spam single button assistant. But if whenever you want to pull another group of mobs, I would click on Death and Decay, basically to get the damage over time under them, and also use another Blood Boil again on all the new targets you're aggroing. This is the biggest trouble I had with Blood Death Knights when you're only using the single button assistant, that it's really not efficient when you jump from a group of mobs to another group of mobs to another group of mobs and so on, because it just doesn't want to use Blood Boil unless you target a target that doesn't have it already, and it doesn't want to use Death and Decay all the time as well. So that's why I would personally prefer having Blood Boil, Death and Decay down on my keybinds so I can keep using them. And again, if it makes it easy for you, you can do it like this. So you just have your cooldowns up there, Anti-Magic Shield and Death Grip, and just play like this instead. It's kind of up to you how you prefer it. So again, let's say how would I do this? I click at the target there, press 1 again, and it's going to be using Death and Decay as well. Now you can see it only Blood Boil this one here, not the others. Well, actually, it kind of did. But what I would do now is I would still use my Blood Boil, I would still use the Death and Decay, and then keep pressing 1. And then just follow the normal rotation that the single button has. One thing we have to remember is that it doesn't always try to use Death Strike as much as possible. You can see we're overcapping in runic power. So, and because of course right now I'm using the Rune Weapon, so it wants to spam as many Vampiric Strike as possible. But you should also keep an eye on your Runic Weapon and use some Death Strikes, because Death Strikes self-heal you a lot, and it also gives you this shield here. So you can see this shield here. So right now it absorbs 59k. If I use it one more time, then it's 73. And whenever I use it again, it's going to be increasing how much it actually can absorb. Default, it can absorb up to, what was it? it was up to 50% of your maximum health. In the raid build, because we have this talent here, it can do up to 65%. So in this case here with my 50%, which I have 400k HP, so it can actually technically give me a shield on 200k. So that's why it's not like a bad idea to use Death Strike, because Death Strike heals, it deals damage, and in the dungeon build it deals multiple damage, like AoE damage, and it also gives you that shield. So it's like, it's not a bad button to use. But again, I have just noticed that the single button assistant is going to be using a lot of like Malrend it automatically use. You don't have to worry about that one, which is going to give you the bone shields. But it doesn't use too many blood boils, and it doesn't use too many death and decays, pretty much only when they expire. So sometimes whenever you're about to pull a new group of mobs, you need to use your blood boil and death and decay on them and move on. But I would say that's the main thing I would like to inform you about. I'm going to show you a gameplay clip very soon where I'm going to be explaining it even more. But again, that's just what I kind of want to highlight to you, that you can do so much better with the single button assistant Blood Death Knight and push it even higher, with higher content and so on. Besides that normal rotation spell, I also want to talk about all the other spells we have, which I know a lot of new players, they like when I do. Next spell we have here is Anti-Magic Shield. It will give you an Absorb Shield for 200k absorbing, but it's only for magic damage. So you can see here, now we are going to absorb the next 200k magic damage, which is technically half our HP. And also while you have it on, you cannot get any harmful magic effects on you. So like curses and debuffs and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. They just get like rejected. Then you have Death Grip, which is a spell that you can use, for example, on that target there, and it will be pulled over to you. It's really efficient as a tank that you could just if you have a group of mobs over here, but you missed that one over there, then you can quickly just pull it over and it will come over here to the rest of the group. Then we have Mind Freeze. Imagine this mob here was casting a spell we don't want it to cast, and I can use Mind Freeze on it, and it will stop casting that spell. It has a very low cooldown, which is 15 seconds. Then we also have Gorefind Grasp, which is a fantastic talent in my opinion. What it does is basically if I use it on myself or a mob, it will pull everyone around you, I think, in for the next 15 yards to that mob that you have targeted. So if I had like a lot of random mobs here around targeting different people, it will then put everyone in here to me, which is quite nice. It's nice to positionate all the mobs in the same location so everyone can like do massive AoE, and it's also easier for like mass interrupting. Then we get the normal taunt, so in case one of the mobs, they like run away or attack someone else than you can click on them, taunt, and it will give them back to you, like you will get the aggro back from that mob. Then we also have Death Advance, which is a spell that just makes you run faster, so in case you need to do that, you can use that one. You have 2 of them, which is quite nice. Then you have one of your strongest cooldown, Vampiric Blood, Embrace Your Undeath, increasing your maximum health by 30% and increasing all healing and absorbed received by 30% as well for 10 seconds. Great spell, and it's a really great spell you could use in hard situations. Then you also have Lichborn, which makes you undead, and also increasing leech by 6% and make you immune to charm, fear, and sleep. So if you got feared, you can technically use this one here and break it, and also it will give you so much more leech. Also, Lichborn, while Lichborn is active, the leech bonus of this effect is increased by 100%. And it also affects 4 allies within 12 yards. So that means this one here is not going to give you only 2% leech, it's now going to give you 4% leech when Lichborn is active, which also gives you 6% leech. But now you also give 4% leech to everyone who is around you. So, any warrior, rogue, whoever's close to you is also now going to heal themselves for 4% of all damage they do, which is quite nice. Then we have Iceborne Fortitude. It makes you immune for like stun effects and also reduce all damage you take by 30%. Again, if you know the boss is about to give like a very strong attack at you, you can use that one and reduce all damage by 30. Then we have Anti-Magic Zone. It reduces all magic damage we take by 15% for everyone who stands inside this one here. And then we have Asphyxiate and Blinding Sleet. Asphyxiate is a single target stun. So imagine this target here was like casting a spell. I already used Mind Freeze on it. Now it's about to cast a second spell again. Then I can actually use as physics. And now it's going to stun the target. So that was like double interrupt. Now, if we have, for example, imagine all these free mobs here is going to cast a spell which I want to interrupt, then I can use Blinding Slate, and now all of them is going to be like blinded or feared or, just interrupted. And whenever you attack them again, it's going to like, stop them from like getting blinded. But the main reason we have that spell is just to interrupt them all casting spells. So you technically have 3 spells that you can interrupt with. You also have your Death Charge, with your Death Grip, where you're like dragging them over. That would technically also stop them for casting. Then we have Raise Undead, which way it's going to summon an undead that's going to help you in combat for like 60 seconds. It doesn't do too much damage. Like it's not really like a high damage. You can see here that it's doing like fine damage, but not too much. It's decent. It has different debuffs that it can put on. For example, this one here, Famine, reduce the damage deal to Dwalin. And also it has this one where Dwalin deals more damage to it. And it can also, use Pestilence, which deals damage over time. Like, it seems like it has, like, a lot of random debuffs that it can use. So, of course, it will give you a little bit more damage. Damage to them and damage less to you. So, it's like a little fun cooldown that you can use every 2 minutes. But it's not something, like, big. It's just like it's a good little help. You could technically move it somewhere else in case you want to like use it more often. Then we also have Chain of Eyes. It just makes the target move slower in case you need that. And then again, I had Blood Boil and Death and Decay here. They are inside the single button rotation, but I just find them so much more like reliant that I can just quickly, use it on a new pack of mobs and use Blood Boil on them. Because that's kind of like the first 2 spells I want to use on a new pack I'm going to pull. And I don't want to like use whatever the single button assistant is suggesting first. But after I have used those 2 spells on a new pack of mobs, then I would just be spamming single button assistant. And again, it's up to you if you want to drag down the spells down here instead, or if you want to have them up there. That's whatever you prefer. Then lastly, we have Raise Ally. In case one of our teammates, they die, we can combat rest them. And because we have this spell here, they're not going to have full health and a shield to you and both the target you compress. So that's pretty cool. But enough about the rotation facts. Let's try do a quick dungeon and I'll show you how it looks. So as I talked about, now for example, I want to pull this entire room here. If I use my single button assistant, it's going to be using Death and Decay, Rune Weapon, and different spells. What I want to try first is I want to kind of get their attention. So what I'm going to start with is taking the group away. Going to use my single button assistant since it's going to be using that AoE damage spell. Now Blood Boil, Death and Decay. Need to use a Death and Decay as well on these mobs down here. Another Blood Boil. And now we can spam single button assistant. Now you can see I'm losing HP, so I want to spam a few Death Strikes. Now we're going to grab that target in there. Going to grab that target in there. And we're going to be using small, single button assistant. So now you can see we got all the targets here. We could use a little bit of Blood Boil on the next. Death and Decay. And now we're about to die, so spam some Death Strikes. And here you go. And then you just spam single button assistant now. And whenever you can see your HP is dipping a lot down, use Death Strike, because the single button assistant is not always recommending using that. See, this is what I mean by the HP can be dipping a lot. We're going to be using some defensives now, since this seems to be doing a lot of damage. This tank here can be a little bit more when it comes to like pulling a lot of different mobs, can be a little bit more difficulty than, for example, the Protection Paladin, Vengeance Demon Hunter, or Brewmaster Monk, because it has so much of the things inside the passive rotation. Also, I recommend whenever your spells here are glowing, I would personally use them. And also when you use them outside the single button assistant, they are anyway faster. But you might notice that the single button assistant doesn't use too many Death Strikes, so that's also something you can help your healer with. Whenever you see your HP dipping, I would technically be using Death Strike, and also a little bit even more, because it's going to keep giving you like a shield. But you can go in here and see healing done, and you'll be seeing that we actually do like a decent amount of healing, which is of course come from Death Strike, Blood Shield, and Blood Plague. Now going back to damage. Boom. So to try to kind of give you a little review of what's tried there. I tried to pull the entire group here, which is a little bit harder when it comes to like a Blood Death Knight, because you don't have like just a spell that you can spam cast like Vengeance Demon Hunter. They have, for example, their I can't remember what it's called, but they can throw the weapon and so on. So I had to kind of like, first start using my Death Chaos and that one, which is single button assistant as suggested. Then I used a Death DK there, Death DK here, and then I made sure that everyone had Blood Boil on them, since it's that disease that deals damage over time. So that was kind of what I tried to do. Then you saw my HP keep dipping very close, like a lot down. And then, of course, it's very important to keep using Death Strike whenever you can, to, keep getting that healing shield and so on. But in most situations, you should be able to use just a single button assistant. Now we can see we're losing aggro on that one there because it doesn't use too many AoE abilities right now. And now we could try pull this group as well. We're going to be using Blood Boil. We're going to pull this target over. And now I think we can just keep using our single button assistant. Since it's used rune weapons, now it's going to be casting a lot of vampiric strikes. One of the things I noticed as well is that it will also, of course, try to keep up your bone shield all the time. You have so many passive effects that it's going to try to keep your bone shield up. So you should be fine on the bone shield part. It is just the Death Strike part that it's lacking a little bit on. It doesn't use Death Strike too much, and it doesn't think about that Death Strike technically is going to give you a shield. So for example, if I wanted to like pull this group here and this group here, I would have to cast Blood Boil myself and these two. Now we could use Anti-Magic Shield ourselves, and now we technically could be spamming. I want to do some more AoE damage, so I'm going to be using now my Blood Boil myself and Death DK, since they're both glowing up. And again, if it's more efficient for you, you can do it like this. Then you just have to remember to also use your Anti-Magic Shield and Death Grip. But yeah, using my Blood Boil, and now basically just spamming one. It might be more efficient to do it like this, but yeah, it's up to you. Blood Boil and spamming one. So yeah, whenever you get like used to it, it's quite easy. You will keep getting mostly aggro all the time. You're gonna have pretty good self-healing. It's just a little bit more difficulty than maybe some of the other single button tanks, because they really use everything inside the single button system, and then it's great at like trying to keep aggro on all the different mobs and self-healing even, where the Blood Death Knight needs a little bit help with using like, Blood Boil, Death DK, and your Death Strike. But else, most of the situation, like on boss fight, you never have to use the other spells. You can just keep spamming one, unless of course you need a little bit more of self-healing. Then of course you need to use that Death Strike. But most of the times you should be fine. Now in this case I can see my healer is not here, so I'm going to be using some defensives. And now I'm just going to be spamming one. Just keep spamming one all the time now. Of course, getting out of that mess there on the ground. Spamming one. Gonna refresh my Blood Boils. Let's use a little bit Death Strike. And the thing is, like, it's not a bad thing not using the single button, because when you use the normal spells, it will have a lower global cooldown, which of course is nice. But again, you could technically also play this spec here with only the single button system without these extra keys. It's just gonna do less self-healing, because it's not always happy for using Death Strike. So it will just help you a little bit more using it yourself. Now we're gonna run out with all the mobs out here. Gonna keep spamming one. Need a Death DK down and your Blood Boil, because it just used rune weapons. And of course, when you use rune weapon, it's important that you use Blood Boil again, because else, like, this is one of the important things. When it uses rune weapons, if you already have a Blood Plague on the target, your damage over time, it doesn't want to use Blood Boil again, which is bad, because you kind of want to reapply Blood Plague, since Blood Plague, because when you have rune weapon on, it's going to be using 3 of the Blood Plagues, which means it will then what I'm trying to say is that when you normally use blood boil, it's going to give 1 blood plague to the target. Then in the rotations, whenever it's going to use your rune weapon, and then your rune weapon, when it's active, is going to triple all your spells. Then when you use blood boil again, it's going to cast 3 of the dots on all your targets. But the single target assistant doesn't think about that, so it's not going to suggest using that again. So that's when you need to do it yourself. And again, this spec here works totally fine with the single button assistant. I still personally feel it's great and fun. I'm having fun with it, but it can be a little bit more challenging. Also, a little bit on the aggro because it doesn't have that many like AoE spells that it just throws from the rotation. So it just needs like it needs like now, for example, it doesn't want to use my blood boil again to get the 3 debuffs on them. So I'm going to use blood boil myself. I could also throw down a Death and Decay to help, you know, with the AoE on both of them, the cleave. And now I'm just going to spam 1. I can see I don't have any blood shield active. Now it actually did one, so now I'm fine. Whenever you can see blood shield is active, you don't really have to, you know, overcap with your Death Strike, but now it's off again, so I can use it again. Technically, by using more Death Strike, is that it's just going to give you more blood shields, which of course is going to help the healer since it's like a free absorbing shield to them. But now in this boss fight here, I can technically, I just have to keep pressing 1 now. Very easy, just pressing 1. Whenever I see my HP is like dipping a lot, then I could, you know, spam my number 2, which is my Death Strike. And also you can use it whenever you want to like help the healer, getting, you know, some blood shield as well. Yeah. And whenever you see, if you see that, sometimes you're going to be summoning some random rune weapons, then because of our Apex talents, then of course it's also a nice thing to use Blood Boil again, since they're going to apply more of these debuffs on the target. You can see we actually have 3 of them right now, because it keeps randomly spawning these rune weapons, which is quite nice. So yeah, again, the Protection Paladin, the Vengeance Demon Hunter, the Brewmaster is a little bit more, don't have to think about mechanics type, where the Blood Death Knight needs a little hand lifting to be actually really, really good when it comes to single button assistant. So yes, if you're going to get a tank as a Blood Death Knight who uses single button assistant, but they actually don't know these tips and tricks I'm trying to talk about in this video, they can be a very, very hard tank to sustain because it just doesn't use all these things. Like it doesn't use Blood Plague whenever you have rune weapons up where you can spread them even about more to more people. It doesn't use Death and Decay between pulling new groups, so it's going to have harder time keeping aggro. It doesn't use Death Strike all the time. Sometimes it's prioritized. Even if you're like almost dying, it can sometimes prioritize using a random spell instead of Death Strike, which is going to save your life. So it's just really like, yeah. It's like, I hope most of the Blood Death Knights who play with the single button assistant, they kind of, you know, use the helping spells, but yeah, whatever. This is the gameplay recommendation I have for the Blood Death Knight. So this was my Blood Death Knight single button guide, 1-button guide for the Blood Death Knight. I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, I'm really trying to min-max when it comes to the single button assistant, really trying to, for people who wants to use the single button assistant for no matter what reason you have to use it. I use it personally because I find it fun, but others have other reasons why they use it, but I just want to help everyone understanding how you can actually use the single button assistant more efficiently. And as you saw with this guide here, that the Blood Death Knight works perfectly with the single button assistant. Like most of the time you can technically just press 1, but if you just want to do that extra self-healing, that extra aggro, that extra damage over time and so on, this is the tips I have in this video here. I hope it wasn't too confusing. What else, you can join the Discord and you can always ask questions in our question room. And in case you want the talent builds, the UI, whatever you have seen in this video, all of that is on my Discord, link in the description, and there is a room called Blood Death Knight where everything from this guide is inside there as well. So yeah, thanks for watching this video. Really appreciate you all for having interest in all my guides. I will keep posting guides as fast as I can. They take a little bit of time to make, so thank you for the patience. In case you want to support even further, feel free to subscribe, like, comment, and even if you want to support even further, feel free to become a YouTube member on this channel here, where your name is also going to be in the end of the video. And I'm also soon going to be posting some behind the scenes and just member only videos, not guides. The guides is going to be for everyone, but just behind the scenes stuff and so on. So yeah, thanks for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next guide. Peace out.